Let us start again. Today, in the beginning, I'll just make you aware of the whole syllabus, the topics in and around which you need to master in the coming course. Okay, so first topic, I hope all of you now know the meaning of enlightenment. So what is enlightenment? Means, if we see in terms of Immanuel Kant, he defines it as maturity of mankind, being able to take conscious decisions without the mediation of the other people. This is what enlightenment is all about. Okay, where you can think properly. So enlightenment or the age of reason, the meaning is same. And these modern ideas, and here UPSC has given two major philosophers, Kant and Rousseau. Then its spread of enlightenment in the various colonies. Yesterday we discussed about the concept of colonialism, the manner in which an imperial power like Britain, all of you understand Britain? Britain is something who was having the vast empire in the world, and they had this famous proverb that an empire over which the sun never set. Okay, so that creation of empire, it happens through colonization. And whenever we talk about colonization, largely it's a negative phenomena, but some positive features are also going to come in. Take the example of Britain and India. They came to India, largely we were exploited. All the peasant, tribal, administration, etc., etc. All of this comes into the negative features. But one positive things like the coming of the modern education. So this is how Enlightenment's ideas, they were spread in the colonies by these colonizers or the imperial powers. Then we discussed about the socialist ideas up to Karl Marx, and here also we have to see how it spread eventually. Yesterday when we were discussing about socialism, socialism has two phases. The first phase is utopian socialism. You can roughly say 1800 to 1848. It's the cutoff date. From 1848 onwards, we see the ideas of Karl Marx. Okay, these ideas spread. In 1867, he came up with another famous book known as Das Kapital, which was published in 3 volumes. Thereafter, we see the rise of communist parties. Okay, and thereafter, the 2 famous revolutions. The first one is with respect to Russian Revolution, second being the Chinese Revolution, and thereafter even the Cold War was fought from 1945 till 1991 on the basis of the ideas of Karl Marx. So it is, this topic is indicative in nature. We have to create these interrelations. The socialism is something which comes as a result of the exploitation which was happening because of industrial revolution. So this is again one of the part. So themes चलेंगे आपकी वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में, एक एक करके सारा फिनिश करेंगे. Then we discussed about the European state system. What kind of state system was there in Europe? Like we had discussed some of the features, like it was despotic in nature, right? Those are the elements of state system. Then American Revolution, the first revolution we discussed yesterday, it was American Revolution. Here also, if we think in academic terms, the better word to be used would be American War of Independence, because the changes for which they were fighting for, they had already been done. No major shift was going to come. See, in case of India, so in 1947 we became independent. So what would you call it? Revolution? Yes, no, on what basis? Should we call it a revolution or not? We mostly call it freedom struggle or freedom movement. Why? Because it starts from 1757 till here. Didn't happen in 1 or 2 days. Even the various changes which happen in Indian society, they came in a traditional manner, not in a one go. Like in 1947, now everybody was enjoying fundamental right. But did these fundamental right came in one day? No. We had discussed Motilal Nehru report also had certain fundamental right. 1931 Karachi session also declaration of fundamental right. Okay. Constitutional history of India, we created constitution, right, which became prominent from 1950 onwards. So that constitution, was it created only after 1947? No. By 1935 the base of the constitution was ready. So that's how we try to evaluate किस तरीके से हमारी चीजें हुई हैं. But when we talk about one specific feature of land reforms, okay, land reforms, तो वहां पे कभी कभार वर्ड यूज होता है revolution, because that happened in one go, that didn't happen previously. So achievement by achievement we have to decide which of the following is a part of evolution, which of the following is a part of revolution. Frankly speaking, as a UPSC student, we do not have to delve much into it because these are academic stuff. That's why even UPSC is not that much careful by framing the syllabus, right? Like the right word to be used for Indus Valley civilization should be Harappan civilization. लेकिन UPSC का syllabus उठाओगे वहाँ क्या लिखा है? Indus Valley civilization. So it means they are trying to judge you more from the point of view of a civil servant who can adapt to a subject and then write answers, rather than being technically sound on each and every word. That is not going to be checked. That's why even if you use the word revolution or American War of Independence, marks दोनों में मिलने वाले हैं. ठीक है, इसको बस ध्यान रखना. Anyway, so they were the one to create the first written constitution also, right? तो वो भी हम पढ़ेंगे क्या क्या उसके features हैं. The federal constitution they created. Then comes the mostly politics of the Britain as well as the Europe. French Revolution starting from 1789. We had created certain phases yesterday. In between we have a very small topic of British democratic politics. One thing you have to remember as a fundamental thing, when we talk about Europe, on one hand we find Britain and rest of the continental Europe. This continental Europe is always going to stay in a destabilized manner, while this is going to enjoy political stability. As all of you can understand, even till today they have kings and queens. Recently the king was coronated. India did not send its president, right, as a reason. Now the stability, because of this stability in Britain, what do we study? We study the British democratic politics, because the changes were going to happen through the system of creation of political parties, coming of various kind of reforms. So that is one topic which we try to study here. Okay, it's not like that since these people were having rule of law, then there were no system of privileges. No, there also they have House of Lords and House of Commons. So this House of Lords, they were majorly used to be feudal lords. Okay, so that was also reformed. There is a famous Reform Act of 1832. Largely we study that. Okay, like today, when somebody asks you, what is a democracy? So what are the words, what are the concepts which come to your mind? So whenever somebody says democracy, the first thing which comes to our mind is, yeah, by election hona chahiye. Okay, but not just election, there should be periodic election. The Chartist movement which began in England, it was fighting for this, that election should be held every year. उनका ये मानना था कि every year there should be election. But all of you understand, अगर every year होने लग गया फिर तो गवर्नेंस खत्म. इन इंडिया तो खत्म है ना, कि बस प्रचार ही चलते रहेंगे सुबह से शाम तक, रैलीज रैलीज एंड रैलीज. So that's why it's better to have a specific tenure for any government. So for democracy, the second thing which would require would be political parties. Without political parties, election कैसे होगा, है ना? We should have some choice for the candidature. सारे ऐसे तो है नहीं कि भाई इंडिपेंडेंट आके लड़ना शुरू कर देंगे. It will be very difficult to manage that. Like suppose if we have 550 seat, 550 different kind of people enter a parliament, कैसे काम चलेगा उन लोगों का? All of them would be fighting. Everybody is going to have ego. Nobody is superior. Nobody is junior. So that's why we require certain political parties. Then this is not enough. We should have right to vote. So if right to vote is not there, how would you say that you are living in a democratic setup? Some people in England have fought for all these things, that there should be regular election. The people who are elected into, like we can say, House of Lords, Commons. Like right now, you know, Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, they have differential sense of powers, and a constitutional amendment mostly same hai, but they have differential set of powers. Like in money bill, Rajya Sabha cannot interfere, it can only recommend. How did this structure was created, है ना, कैसे बना ये? Or when we talk about the speaker, how the institution of speaker was created, all those things were done in England one after the another in the early 19th century. So this whole democratic politics, this topic we study. Okay. Then, as all of you know, in America, even though it became independent, the first colony to do so. So from 1776 till 1783, in 83 they signed Treaty of Paris, as which they were recognized by the Britain also. By 1787 they were able to draft their constitution, and it was finally came into promulgation from 1789. So 1789 is a defining year. Why? Because America was now going for a written constitution and the practices, while in France we see the outbreak of revolution. So the both world, America is known as the new world, Europe is known as the old world, because civilization started at this place earlier than America. और अमेरिका को हमने मोस्टली कब डिस्कवर किया है? इन द लेट 15th सेंचुरी, है ना. 1492 कोलंबस का इंडिया जा रहा हूँ and he landed in America. So that's why it's the new world. But we, Asia and Europe, we are the old world or the old civilization. जैसे इंडिया के बारे में बोला जाता ना, India is a nation of young people but an old civilization. Civilization like Harappa, बहुत पहले से start हो चुका है हमारे यहाँ पे. So anyway, even though they were able to create a constitution, they were not able to sort out the issue of slavery. Now some people were for slavery, some people were against it, and as a result America got divided. The famous president Abraham Lincoln, he was chosen in the elections of 1860, and as all of you know, in the American constitution date भी लिखा हुआ है किस दिन आगे president अपना swear in करेंगे and he'll join the office. So in 1861, Feb 1861 he joined, but the southern states of America, they started leaving the union and nothing was written in the constitution. All of you know ना, इंडिया का जब हमने बनाया था constitution, this you must have read in the polity, and we have not used the word federation, we have used the word union. Union itself means no state can leave India. And why did we come to this? Because हमने ये देख लिया already, the civil war. So from 1861 till 65 there was a civil war, and largely the frictions were created by the issue of slavery, and somehow it was ended. Okay, and then we see that the constitution was redrafted, some of the provisions with the help of amendments they were completely finished off. Okay, so this is also, we understand, it's a very small topic. Then yesterday we were discussing what is industrialization, industrial revolution. So we discussed the factors which were responsible for it in England, rest of the countries, USA, Germany, Russia as well as Japan, and how they were different. So वो हम बाद में आराम से discuss करेंगे, but this is one of the topic. Then comes the system of nation state. We have discussed this concept while discussing the modern concept classes, the difference between nation and state. State is more of a political entity. Okay, nation is a cultural concept. While on the other hand, state had certain attributes, that people or citizens should have a government, it should have territory, and finally it should be able to have sovereignty. Okay, so what happened in the world in 19th century? there were many nations like Germans, but Germans were divided in different states. So there were various same nation but different state. So when they tried to unify themselves, this eventually became the concept of nation and state, where the cultural boundaries and the political boundaries are same. That becomes nation state. Like Germany, if you see today, even today it is not, if you say like Germany as well as Austria, both of them, they are German people, both are German. So what can we say in this case? The nation is one, but state are two. Okay, so this is not hard and fast कि हर जगह nation state हो ही पाएगा, but this concept was tried to build in Germany. Largely Germany was unified, but it is more applicable in the case of Italy. All the territory, all the Italian people, they were unified by Cavour. So this is something which we study, nation building. Then disintegration of various empires later on. Yesterday I introduced these words to you. What is imperialism? Where a big colonial power like Britain, they try to increase their status. Okay, that is imperialism, and colonialism is the practice through which they do so. So in this we try to understand South and Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia we discuss about Vietnam, we discuss about Indonesia, all those countries. Latin America, in Latin America we mostly discuss about Argentina, Bolivia, these countries. Okay, South Africa, Australia. This word also we discussed yesterday, neo-imperialism or new imperialism after the unification of Germany and Italy. The fight that they started for capturing more and more territory, that is known as new imperialism. Okay. Then certain 19th century European revolutions like 1830 and 1848. These are the European revolutions. Russian Revolution of 1917, the fascist counter revolution, the rise of Hitler as well as Mussolini, and Chinese Revolution of 1949. ये सब हमने अलग से क्लब करे हैं because इनका नेचर थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट है from the other revolutions that we see. Then we have the seminal events of World War. How they start, World War I, World War II, why they are known as total wars. And this is a very important concept of total war. But whenever somebody uses the word total war, it has certain connotation. Total war means not only army, every citizen of the state is going to contribute in one way or the other. Such a war is known as total war, meaning using the total capacity of a country is known as total war. Let me give you an example, like different shades of people. Like when we have diplomats, these diplomats fight by creating alliances versus counter alliances. Army is going to fight on the field. And whenever we have more and more soldiers going into the battlefield, so the sections of society like women, they take care of business, they take care of houses, they take care of hospitals. So in a way, everybody gets deployed in one way or the other. And such a concept is known as total war. थोड़े से और इसमें additional points हम बाद में discuss करेंगे. Right now I'm not introducing the technical terms. Total war का मतलब यही होता है, you're not only targeting the army of the other nation, you're also targeting the civilians. Like it happened in the case of Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Civilians were bombed. Alright, so all these features where it becomes a complete catastrophe, that is known as total war. This concept of total war was given by one of the German general. Okay, he was General Ludendorff, who wrote this book, The Total War, after the First World War. And eventually, even in the Second World War, we use this concept of total war. And thereafter, as all of you know, the world was divided into two power blocks, USA versus USSR, and the rise of Cold War. Then the organization like NAM, UNO, liberation, ये उसी का second part है, colonization and then decolonization. So in decolonization we have all these. Latin America में the role of Bolivar, the role in Egypt of Colonel Nasser. In apartheid we also discussed the role of who is the famous personality from South Africa, Nelson Mandela. Okay, also known as Madiba. And finally in Vietnam we see the role of Ho Chi Minh. Okay. This is the syllabus which we have discussed. Yesterday I discussed some of the concept. Today we discuss the rest of the syllabus. Now let us start with the events. Let us try to have a complete understanding. One of the most important event is French Revolution. Okay. Whenever somebody say French Revolution, everybody see it with the eyes of awe. Itna bada event ho gaya. And when you hear about this event, you'll also understand how the things were changing in the world one after the other. I introduced you the concept of enlightenment. Enlightenment brought some new ideas, and those ideas were going to become very prominent, and they started affecting the imagination of the people. Okay, but whenever such revolution starts, this is not going to start just because we have new ideas. Some problems were also required. Okay, it's only in the misery we see the outbreak of revolution. And in the case of France, it was because of the economic problems. Okay, around 25% of our syllabus is only French Revolution. बहुत डिटेल में पढ़ना पड़ता है हमें, हर एक छोटे छोटे इवेंट को देखना पड़ता है. तभी मैं उतना तो आपको नहीं पढ़ा पाऊंगा. I'll just give you brief overview इसका आप दूंगा. So economic problems. So economic problems were like, first of all, I told you that people were having privileges, and because of privileges, the whole society of France was divided into 3 estates. The first estate was clergy or the religious people, second was nobility, and the third one, it was the known as third estate or the common people. These first 2 sections, they were roughly 2% of the total population of France, and they were controlling roughly 35% of the total resources of the country. So a very unequal wealth structure was there in France, and on the top of it, both clergy and nobility, they were free from any form of taxation. कोई tax नहीं था इनके ऊपर. That's why eventually the revenue of the French government was always going to be less. Okay, and if they come for some kind of mischievous policies, it was even going to become worse. And this was the problem of the absolutist monarchy. Absolutist monarchy. This absolute monarchy used to think that whole France is at my footsteps. जब मन करे war लड़ते हैं, जब मन करे जो कुछ करते हैं. They were not thinking about what will be its impact on my country. They were not accountable to them. So that's why large number of wars and battle, as we have already discussed, the rivalry between Britain and France. They fought the 7-year war from 1756 to 1763. Then again they participated in the American War of Independence, supported them. A total expenditure of roughly 5 million livres. Livre was the currency of there at that point of time. This was spent by France for supporting the liberation of USA. 5 million livres. So because of all these mistakes of the monarchy, by 1787, Treasury was empty. Treasury was empty. Whenever there is an economic crisis, we require very good personalities to handle it. Like India also had an economic crisis in 1991. Okay, and it was Manmohan Singh who handled that crisis. So whenever we have big crisis, we require great personality to handle them. But the problem in France was, and this is something which you have to recognize, the power has changed in 1774. And the person who came to power, he was King Louis XVI. A person who was very weak, narrow-minded. Okay, one of his ministers quit his government, and he was telling him, "It's so good that you have quit. I hope I could also quit someday." Okay, so a king himself is feeling that this is a burden, not enjoying the privileges. If somebody who can enjoy the privileges, naturally they're going to have strong personality. Somebody of very weak personality came to power. On the top of it, now since he was weak, his wife, Marie Antoinette, okay, she was given a name by the French press, Madame Deficit. Okay, we use the word deficit for what? Fiscal deficit means we have more expenditure than earning. Similar word was used for Marie Antoinette, Madame Deficit, because she used to splurge. है ना, बड़े बड़े महलों में रहने की आदत. All those problems. Revenue है नहीं, है ना, revenue is dying down because of wars and battle, as well as the faulty taxation structure. And on the top of it, we have a person who is very weak. So the chances of these crises being resolved by King Louis XVI are already less. And when you are weak, like suppose when we start preparation, we are always like hoga nahi hoga. And if you have a good circle around you, your family, your friends, you're saying nahi yaar padhai karo, it will happen. You have people like Marie Antoinette around you, those who are going to make your life even more tough. So the whole administration which was not handled by him was getting handled by her. And in such a situation, in 1787, the treasury was empty. क्या करें अब? What to do, what not to do? So king appointed some of the finest ministers, which included Turgot, Necker. इनके नाम याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है. I'm writing them just to make you sure कि बहुत सारे मिनिस्टर आए एक एक करके. Finance ministers were changed one after the another. Whenever we have crisis, so more people are required who could come up with some formula. So these finance ministers were appointed one after the other, but all of them were dismissed one after the other. Why? Because all of them, they said one thing: we have to impose taxation on the rich. Those who have the complete control over resources, if we are not taxing them, तो कैसे revenue बढ़ेगा? है ना? All of you must have read कि अभी जैसे गवर्नमेंट ने एक रूल लेके आया कि 20% tax will be collected at source if you are doing more than 7 lakh expenditure in the international transaction. ऐसा कोई रूल है? पढ़ा है नहीं पढ़ा? बजट में इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया. Why is it that done? आपका मेरा तो इतना ज्यादा फॉरेन एक्सपेंडिचर है नहीं. किसका है? Of the ultra rich. They are the one who are going on foreign trips. मोदी जी को छोड़ के उनका फ्री है सब, है ना, because of the state. But anyway, rest of them, they are going to pay more taxes. So this is considered as progressive kind of taxation where the richer is taxed more. All of you know there are income tax slabs in India, है ना, कि 5 लाख तक लगभग आपका जीरो टैक्स हो गया. आप उसको स्लैब को थोड़ा सा बढ़ा दिया, 7 लाख तक कर दिया. ओल्ड न्यू स्कीम है, चलो उसमें नहीं जाते. बट एनीवे देयर आर स्लैब्स कि यहाँ तक है तो जीरो टैक्स, देन 10%, then 20%, then 30%, and then even there is surcharge on the taxes. So such a system is sustainable. But in this case, and suppose if your king is weak, the ministers are always going to get dismissed because these suggestions he cannot enforce. In France, there was a system, like right now in India, we have a parliament. So all the new taxes, they are imposed by parliament. Their parliament was known by the name Estate General. This has last met in 1614. We are talking about 1789. So it was almost 175 years. So for last 175 years, king did not require any kind of popular support or parliament to take any decision. Okay, but in 1789 things changed. So what happened? We have a very weak king. Okay, this king was given suggestion by the nobility, which were known as aristocrats, that if you want to impose any new tax, you have to summon this State General. Do you know the case of 370 article? So what happened in 370 article in Indian Constitution? ये एक बार उसको बनाया, ठीक है, whichever legislative assembly, और तो constituent assembly था, that was disbanded, लेकिन वह लिखा क्या गया, इसको चेंज कौन करेगा, constituent assembly. बट वो तो चलो ठीक है, वट एवर लीगल प्रोसीजर वाज यूज्ड एट दैट पॉइंट, गवर्नर को यूज कर लिया. बट यहां पर भी वही प्रॉब्लम आ गई कि स्टेट जनरल इज नाउ रिक्वायर्ड. यू आर ए किंग, आप इन अरिस्टोक्रेट की बात क्यों सुन रहे हो? यू कैन ऑलवेज गिव योर ओन ऑर्डर्स. फ्रॉम लास्ट 175 years, नो किंग लिसन टू दिस पार्लियामेंट, नेवर रिक्वायर्ड इट. एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम किंग सेड ओके, ये भी कर लेते हैं. This is the beginning of French Revolution, where absolute monarchy has now become unsustainable. It is not able to take any kind of decision, and now it is going toward a populist body. This is the beginning of French Revolution, and once it will start, the problems are going to magnify. As I have told you, even in the parliament, they had 3 houses. The first house, naturally, it belonged to the religious class, okay, or the clergy. The second one was nobles or nobility, aristocratic people who used to become part of the government, and third was the third estate. So naturally, if you are going to summon the State General, elections were held, okay, and on the basis of election, people were chosen. This parliament used to take decision not in the basis of the number of people. These 3 were 3 separate houses, and whatever used to be the verdict of 2 houses became the final decision. All of you can easily understand कौन से 2 house हमेशा साथ में रहेंगे. These are going to be clergy and nobility. These people suggested this solution to the king. क्यों? उनको लगा कि यहाँ ये आएगा, यहाँ हम फिर से डिफीट कर देंगे, टाइम पास चलता रहेगा अपना अच्छा, and our privileges will never be taken away. But this time when the third estate came, they said we want a joint sitting. They said we want a joint sitting. हम ऐसे बैठेंगे ही नहीं, ये सब तो बकवास है, इलेक्शन ही क्यों करवाए थे, है ना, आप टाइम पास करा, पूरे फ्रांस में इलेक्शन किया, आपने एक्सपेंडिचर किया, वैसे ही पैसा नहीं और एक्सपेंडिचर करवा दिया इलेक्शन के ऊपर. So they said we want to sit together. So eventually king was forced, and rather than separate houses, this became one complete estate general, in which now this third estate were in majority. So roughly there were 600 people, and out of 600, more than 300 people, they were from third estate. Okay, so this is how the problem starts. The whole problem, it began because of finance. Okay, we understood. It began because of finance. It was further increased by the problems of the king. He was a very weak person. बट क्या होता है ना, जब लड़ाई शुरू होती है, आपने भी देखा होगा ना, कोई किसी भी रिलेशन में लड़ाई शुरू किसी चीज पे होती है, वो खत्म कहीं और होती है ना. स्टार्ट हुआ था किसी और चीज पे कि तूने मुझे ब्रेड पास नहीं किया, ये नहीं किया, वो नहीं किया, और लास्ट में क्या, आगे पूरी हिस्ट्री की लड़ाई एक साथ लड़ते फिर हम. सेम सिचुएशन वाज देयर. Already there were problems in society of privileges, okay, the problems were with respect to even the domination of the church, etc, etc, etc. So when the elected people came, they did not limit themselves to finance and its reformation. They started listing each and everything कि भाई ये problem है, privileges are there in the society, this. So the elections were held roughly around by May. They came, by June they were able to reform their estate general, and joint sitting became possible. In August, all the privileges were abolished. So what started for reforming the finance, जाके किसको reform कर दिया? Society को. So now all these 98% of the citizens, now they are having the all the rights. Declaration of Rights and Citizen. This was announced on 26th of August 1789. Okay, so this is how the French Revolution is a very important phenomenon in world history. The first revolution which tried to create the today's most sought after quality of equality, and this was done by this liberty. What is the meaning of liberty? Absence of restrictions. There should not be restrictions. So whatever restrictions were made by the state, they were reduced of any kind. Rule of law, all those important qualities which we discussed in the Enlightenment in different fields, they were introduced. And finally, even the quality of fraternity. So these three became the ideals of French Revolution. And this is how the sequence is going to play out. In 1789, they were not thinking that they are going to remove the king. Okay, we discussed yesterday that these new ideas, they started taking place in France, and France started creating their institutions or systems on the basis of these new ideas. Naturally, this was going to frighten the other monarchies of Europe, which included England, one of the most conservative country in these terms, Austria, Prussia, as well as Russia. So all these countries, they created coalitions one after the other so that these new ideas can be defeated. है ना, आप समझो ना, like try to imagine all of you are kings and queens. Somebody came and said there should be equality. आपका तो सब चला गया. Everything is gone. सब खत्म हो गया ना. Think in terms of the princely states of India. When they integrated in 1947 under the pressure by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, they were told जिंदगी भर मजा करेंगे, privy purse मिलेगा, ये होगा, this and that. But that privy purse was abolished by 1971. उनका तो चला गया. And I'm not in favor of the kings and queens, but if we see from their perspective, the same situation was here. The world was reforming itself on the basis of new ideas of enlightenment which were going to affect their interest. That's why all these monarchies, they came one after the created coalition so that they can defeat these forces, these people who were fighting for new ideas. And eventually this was the one. And in this, as you can understand, one country was Austria. The problem was Marie Antoinette. She was from the royal family of Austria. So when Austria started fighting, this also gave a color that the king and the queen, they are providing secret information to the outsiders, and they are against the overall fabric of the nation of France. So both of them, they were now considered as traitors. Okay, so this whole situation, which starts from 1787, becomes uncontrollable. This is the phase in which we see large number of tremendous changes, okay, one after the another. All right, and by 1793 the king was executed. They declared France as a republic itself. We do not want king and queens. And at a time when they were fighting with these coalitions, we see the rise of Napoleon. Because if the foreign powers are merging, somebody has to defend the country, and it was Napoleon who came into the limelight. And to the amazement of the world, Napoleon defeated all these countries together. That's why he is such a loved personality in France. So he comes into picture in 1795 for defending their new formed parliament, which was known as National Convention in 1795. In 1796-97, he is going to defeat Italy. Italy and Prussia comes under his nominal control. Then he'll even plan an expedition of Egypt in 1798. This will also discuss in modern India. This was the time when Lord Wellesley came to India. Egypt was very vital. If you have control over the Egypt, you can come towards India. But this expedition was unsuccessful. And thereafter, his major focus, it remained towards France. So in 1799, they created a system known as consul. So he became the first consul. Means three main personality was going to lead the administration, and he became the first consul. In 1804, he coronated himself. Raja ban gaye. छोड़ो ये सब रिपब्लिक का क्या करोगे? Everybody wants in the end to have the coronation कि भाई होना चाहिए, grand affair होना चाहिए. But French public did not resist it because he was able to defeat all the foreign powers. Plus, at the same time, he kept on reforming the administration on the basis of new ideas. Okay, so the king, which was a symbol of absolutism, which was a symbol of the organized anarchy, he was not a part of that. He was a part of the reformed kind of monarchy. So he coronated himself in 1804. So this is a classic struggle which we see, that his becoming the first consul, coronating himself. By 1807, except Britain, all the countries were completely defeated by Napoleon. So by 1807, the continental Europe was completely under him. So 1807 is often considered as the high watermark of the career of Napoleon. All the reforms were done in his own country, including even in Italy, Prussia. Okay, so this was done by 1807. Starting from 1808, he invaded Spain, which was going to become a bit of a problematic for him. In 1812, he went for an expedition towards Russia, and that too in winter. In winter, nobody can survive in Russia. Okay, so this was the problem. His army was known as Grand Army, that was getting affected by 1812. That's why when all the nation, they created their fourth coalition. Three coalitions were defeated by him, one after the other. The fourth coalition defeated Napoleon in 1813 in the famous Battle of Leipzig. This is the battle which I was talking to you yesterday. कि Waterloo तो हमने सबने पढ़ा हुआ है books में, NCERTs में, but the more important battle is the Battle of Leipzig. After 1813, when he was defeated, he was sent to an island in the Mediterranean known as Elba. Okay, he came back in 1815. He was again defeated in the Battle of Waterloo, and then he was sent off to St. Helena. This is an island between South America and Africa, बिल्कुल उसके middle of the ocean में. कहाँ भाग के जाओगे? Alright. So in 1815, the whole chapter, which starts in 1789, about reforms, new ideas, this was going to get checked. And all these monarchies which were fighting for the old ideas, which were the old ideas? Despotism, privileges. Okay, these were the old world. Institution of church dominating the lives of the people. They again were restored in 1815. Okay, are you able to understand the context? We see the age of enlightenment. This enlightenment ideas are going to affect France, but it didn't happen on itself. It happened because France was going through a very struggling phase, which was started by the, you can say, because of the problems of economy, or economy was in shambles, which eventually tested the capacity of the king. The king was not effective enough, which led to the summoning of a state general or their parliament, which created large number of reforms, and in the process even French became a republic. When it was getting eventually, you can say, fighting with the rest of the countries of Europe, Napoleon was the one who was able to safeguard them and even defeat those monarchies. But by 1815, even Napoleon was defeated. This is the story which you have to remember. This is from 1789 to 1815, the first phase. In this phase, UPSC often asks the question which were responsible for the outbreak of French Revolution. It asks the question with respect to the reforms of Napoleon or the factors for the decline of Napoleon. Okay, all this. After Napoleon, the next major personality we have is Prince Metternich. So he was from Austria. He was from Austria. In 1815, he led a famous convention. All of you know the capital of Austria, that is Vienna. So this Vienna Congress, this had a meeting in 1815. All of these monarchies which I have listed on the board, all these came back and they said, यार बहुत ज़्यादा दिक्कत हो गई हम सब लोगों के लिए, है ना? Everybody is thinking we should have a republic. They're saying we should have equality, all this, that. So many revolutions from last 25 years, the whole Europe is fighting against each other. So we should create some system through which we can preserve our own powers and at the same time, okay, thoda bahut changes kar denge whenever it is required. So these policies are known as reactionary policies. And Metternich became the main head of this from 1815 onwards. Okay, so phases में अगर आपको personality भी याद करनी है तो ऐसे याद करो, from 1815 till 1848 the dominant personality is Metternich. Okay, with French Revolution, we see rise of one famous concept which became the reality, that was nationalism. When France was getting invaded by the other powers, the whole French people, they got united. Like all of you know कि जब भी हमें पाकिस्तान वाला issue आता, all of us become united. We do not say कि हम North Indian है, South Indian है, caste क्या है, ये क्या, all those internal differences, they go away and there is only one enemy, that is Pakistan, the outside power. Same situation happened in French. We see the rise of nationalism, the concept of nation state, and because of this, other personalities of Germany, of Italy, also wanted a similar kind of setup. In Germany, we were having Bismarck. Similarly, in Italy, we were having Cavour. Okay, but they were always going to do it in the later on part. Like Bismarck, he was born in 1815. Okay, became a true Prussian. Okay, Germany was divided, and that's why this whole concept of nationalism is going to play out from 1848 to 1871. So in this second part, we'll talk about Bismarck and Cavour. Cavour is going to lead the unification of Italy, and Bismarck is going to do the same in Germany. And this whole process was getting affected by one of the biggest potent force which has been seen by the humankind, and that is nationalism. All of you understand, nationalism under control is okay. If it becomes too much, eventually, which is known as jingoism, है ना, कि बस आप बाहर लोगों को criticize कर रहे हो for the sake of your own politics. Alright, this force of nationalism is going to become stronger and stronger in Europe. And all of you know, the First World War, it was forced because of nationalism. That's why even Rabindranath Tagore, he criticized this concept of nationalism. He said there should be internationalism rather than nationalism. But this nationalism was picking up pace after the French Revolution. So from 1815 till 1848, the major developments that we see, first the Vienna Congress, it came up with the settlements. All the territory which were captured by the French, they were taken away from them. Okay, and they came up with one famous concept known as balance of power. They said no country should be that strong that it can affect the peace of Europe on its own terms. किसी को इतना बनने नहीं देना है. And for the first time, they created this Vienna Congress, which included Austria, England, Russia. These were the three major powers, and along with Prussia, they created this Congress, and this became the major concept in the history of the world, balance of power. Because for last 25 years, France was fighting with everyone. Okay, I'm not saying it was started by France, but it was able to fight. So this shows the unsymmetry कि एक nation इतनी country से कैसे fight कर सकता है, and that happened because they were having the force of nationalism, which was relatively absent in other countries. So from 1815 till 1848, the Vienna Congress had only one major objective: we have to suppress nationalism. This nationalism has been responsible for the fight of last 25 years. That's why they are not going to allow any kind of revolution in any country. Okay, like in Naples, a revolution was building up in 1820. It was suppressed by this Vienna Congress. Greece wanted to become independent of the Ottoman Empire, but it was not getting any help from European power, because again they said we have one principle: we are not going to support any kind of revolutions, because these revolutions are affecting peace and stability of Europe. So because of all these factors, from 1815 till 1848, this whole regime is known as reactionary, meaning they were trying to preserve their own privileges and they were not coming up in terms with the reality. The reality has changed after French Revolution. So in these 3 decades, they were able to stop any kind of new development, but still Europe tried to revolt against it. So we have 2 defining years, 1830 and 1848. 1830 revolution, it also started in France. So what happened? The dynasty which was ruling in France, it was known as Bourbon dynasty. King Louis XVI belonged to this dynasty. In 1815, we see Napoleon was defeated. We see reinstatement of the next king, King Louis XVIII. He became the king. He again died by 1824. Okay. After this, we see the rise of King Charles. He was also from the same dynasty. So whatever positive things had happened in France with respect to declaration of rights, elections, etc., etc., he came up with decree that all of this should be stopped, and this happened in 1830. And as I have given you example yesterday, Paris was always ready for such kind of events. Ye karo kuch aisa. Okay, people had become aware. A country in which people are aware, you cannot do such kind of changes. They are always going to oppose them. And the same situation came in 1830. The moment King Charles came up with these kind of decrees, he eventually fled. And the famous country for all the running away people is which country? England. Modi ho ya Malia, sab kahan jate hain? England. But try to see it from the history of these people also. All of them, they flee to England because of rule of law. No country has given that much of preference to rule of law that has been given by England. So even him, all of these, they are going to run away to England. Anyway, let us come to next. So in 1830, the revolution starts in France, and the other countries also see same kind of wave. They also said we want constitutional monarchy. They also said we also want to create nation state. So at this point of time, Belgium became independent of Netherlands. So one after the other, all those ideas of French Revolution which were kept under control by the Vienna Congress, they were now getting released in the form of these revolutions. So in 1830, France again became the spearhead, okay, and thereafter the other countries followed. But other countries were not that much successful. Again, the rule from 1830 to 1848. We see change of dynasty in France, and King Louis Philippe from Orleans dynasty, he comes to power in 1830. In 1848, again there were certain events with respect to King Louis Philippe, and he resigned in 1848, and as a result again a revolution began. France again become a republic, फिर से republic बन गया because the king was overthrown in 1848. At this point of time, Germany as well as Italy, their leaders tried to unify them. Okay, the throne was tried to be given to the king of Prussia. It failed. In Italy, the king of the state of Italy, which was Piedmont and Sardinia, they tried to unify, but they also failed. So in 1848, Austria also saw a revolution, and as a result, Prince Metternich, he also fled to England in 1848. So by 1848, the whole of Europe, it wanted to recast itself, and the two prominent countries which were going to be formed in the next 20-25 years would be Germany and Italy. Both of them, they were having different set of structure. So if we see Germany has two important power. One was Austria, the second was Prussia. Other than this, there were 300 smaller states. Okay, just like India, at the time of independence, we had princely states roughly 562. So they also had this problem. When Napoleon was able to control some of these areas, he amalgamated them and reduced them to 39. But these two remain the major powers. If we see the case of Italy, Italy only had one major state known as Piedmont, Sardinia, and rest of its territories, Lombardy, Venetia, they were under the control of Austria. The middle of the Italy, it was under the control of Pope. All of you know Rome. Rome used to be the main area where we used to have the capital of Roman Empire or the Holy Roman Empire. The south part of Italy, it was under the control of a Bourbon dynasty, Naples and Sicily. So in this way, Italy and Germany both were divided, and this is the picture of 1848. Now these two countries are going to become very active, and this is going to affect the next course of developments in Europe. So if we see the case of Italy, Piedmont, Sardinia was their leading state, and their leading personality was Cavour. Okay, he saw an opportunity. A war was being fought in 1853 to 56, known as Crimean War, and in this Crimean War, Britain and France, they were fighting versus Russia. So Cavour deliberately sent some 18,000 soldiers to support Britain and France. He thought that if Britain and France are going to win, eventually he can internationalize the Italian question. He can tell them about the problems which faced by them because of the rule of Austria. And as a result, when in 1856 the Treaty of Paris was signed, Cavour was present there, and he tried to show that Piedmont, Sardinia is facing a lot of issue because of the manner in which the rest of the Italians are treated. Okay, so as a result, by 1858, they signed a pact with France. There was change of power in 1848. Napoleon III, who was the nephew of Napoleon, he came to power in 1848. And as जैसा कि फ्रांस में चलता रहा है, पहले बनेंगे प्रेसिडेंट, फिर बनेंगे king. In 1852, he coronated himself. He was considering himself as a big supporter of nationalism. And when Cavour met him in 1858, a meeting was set, and Napoleon III said, if Austria is going to fight with Piedmont Sardinia, I'm going to send 2 lakh soldiers. Okay, and seeing this opportunity, Cavour started a kind of resistance in Lombardy and Venetia, both of which under the control of Austria. So naturally, when disturbances were beginning, Austria attacked Piedmont and Sardinia. Piedmont Sardinia was a very small state, and as a result, Lombardy, okay, was the place where French sent 2 lakh soldiers, and Lombardy became part of Piedmont Sardinia. So when we talk about Italy, इटली को आप इस तरीके से देखो, this was the area of Piedmont Sardinia, roughly small. This was Lombardy, this was Venetia, okay, this was the area under the control of Pope, this was known as Naples, there was small island known as Sicily. So we are talking about this northern part, Lombardy and Venetia. So Lombardy and Venetia, they participated in this, and the state of Piedmont Sardinia in first phase was able to get Lombardy, वो उसके अंदर merge कर दिया गया. Thereafter Cavour took the help of one of the mercenary. Okay, there was a famous mercenary who used to go to one place to another. Other than Cavour, we had the famous personality of Mazzini. Just like we have Mahatma Gandhi, there the main personality who evokes emotion is known as Mazzini. Then we have the mercenary known as Garibaldi. So Garibaldi, mercenary means if you pay them, they are going to fight for you. Okay, so he was the mercenary at that point of time. So Garibaldi was supported by Cavour, and he attacked these Naples and Sicily, both of which were taken over by him, and they were also merged. So by 1861, they were able to get Lombardy as well as Naples and Sicily, and in 1861, Italian King Victor Emmanuel II, he was coronated, but still the territory of Venetia as well as the area under the control of Pope remained outside his control, and for that he had to depend upon Germany. Without Germany, that was never going to happen. So Germany's unification is a bit different from Italian. Italian always required the foreign help because the state which was the center point of the unification activities, it was very weak. Here we had very powerful states, Prussia and Austria, and the whole process was taken by Bismarck. Bismarck was a very big strategist, okay, and he wanted a certain kind of unification in which Austria can be ousted. It should not become part of the union somehow. So Bismarck comes to power in 1862. His whole policy is known as policy of blood and iron. So he fought 3 major wars. First was fought with Denmark, second was fought with Austria, and third was fought with France. These are the 3 major countries which were to be defeated by him. Okay, Denmark was more of a training ground for him. There were 2 small areas known as duchies, means they were under the nominal control of Denmark. Okay. Known as Schleswig and Holstein. These were the two small territories which were under the nominal control of Denmark, and the king of Denmark was trying to annex them, कि हमारी territory का ही part बन जाए. Okay, so in the first instance, Bismarck took the support of Austria and defeated Denmark. है ना? Bismarck took the support of Austria, telling them that both of these territory are German, we are German brothers, we are going to share the spoil between us. So under this, Schleswig was merged with Prussia, and Holstein, it remained with Austria. Okay, so since he was a strategist, first he defeated Denmark, then comes the question of Austria. Now Austria was the common enemy of both Italy as well as Prussia, and as a result, when Bismarck was going to fight a war in 1866, he met the Italian king. He said, I'm going to fight with Austria. What you have to do, just fight with them from the south, and in the end, I'm going to give you the territory of Venetia. So in this 1866, the famous Battle of Sedova, Austria was defeated by Prussia, and as a result, Italy also benefited because they got the territory of Venetia. Alright, the last chapter was the Battle of Sedan. Now the problem was, the southern part of Germany, it shares border with France, and France was never going to have a very strong neighbor. And France was, as you can understand, so far from 1789 with the outbreak of French Revolution till 1870, this was one of the biggest power in Europe, enjoying the prestige for various kinds of revolutions, 89, 1830, 1848, and this was never going to allow Germany to get unified. Okay, that's why the final war was fought in 1870, and this led to the unification of Germany, and France was badly defeated in the Battle of Sedan. Okay, France was a Catholic country, and as a result, they were always providing support to Pope. And in this Battle of Sedan, all these troops were taken away by France so that they can fight with Prussia, and as a result, even Italy benefited, and Rome was captured by the army of Italians. So 1870, both these countries are ready, and the whole western part of Europe, the map was redrawn. Alright, so these are the phases which you need to understand in world history. 1789 to 1815, the age of French Revolution and Napoleon. 1815 to 1848, in which we see the rise of Metternich plus the reactionary policies which were against the liberal values of enlightenment, but still people started to fight, which led to the downfall of Metternich. From 1848 till 1871, we see state building activities in Europe with the creation of Germany and Italy. So by 1871, the whole Europe, the western part, it was completely reshaped. But the problem came, both Italy and Germany were not having any kind of empire. Now the whole prestige, it depended upon empire. किसके पास कितनी ज़्यादा territory है. So now they started becoming more aggressive in the international politics, and as a result, the conflict started increasing in Europe. Okay, one more thing which is important for us, that if you see the map of Europe, there are already two major outbreaks of the nationalism were seen by Europe in French Revolution and then the unification of Germany and Italy, the creation of the nation state. the third phase was waiting for them, and this was going to become the most massive for all of them. This was the problem of Eastern Europe. When we talk about Eastern Europe, this eastern part of Europe was under the control of Ottoman Empire. Okay, and as a result, state building activities had not happened there. One after the another, few of the countries, they were able to become separate from Ottoman Empire, but large number of countries, like when we talk about them, Albania, Romania, Bulgaria, all these smaller countries in Eastern Europe, they also started fighting for their unification. Like Serbia, it wanted Montenegro should be given to it. It also wanted Albania. Different territories, all these eastern part of Europe started fighting, and there was one empire which was having maximum interest in these area. It was the empire of Austria and Hungary, which has large number of races within it. The problem was even complicated because of Russia. Russia wanted to control this area of Eastern Europe. Even till today, as all of you understand, they have massive interest in Eastern Europe. What's the main reason for that? Because Black Sea is very important to Russia. The northern sea of the close to Arctic, they all get frozen in the winter. तो क्या बचता है इनके लिए trade के लिए? It is the Black Sea. If they will give that away, all the strategic depth, it will go away. So that's why Russia was against Austria and Hungary and started supporting these territories. So from 1871 onwards, we see two problems rising in Europe. One, aggressiveness from Germany and Italy, and second, the term used for it is Eastern Question. And both of them are going to combine, and this will become the recipe for the First World War. As all of you know, what were the events of the First World War? The First World War was fought for which reason? The immediate reason was the murder of French Ferdinand, and French Ferdinand, he was from the Empire of Austria and Hungary, and the murder was done by Gavrilo Princip, and he was from which country? Serbia. So it was the Eastern Question which provided the spark to Europe. Okay, it was the Eastern Question. अगर ये नहीं होता, if Austria-Hungary had not attacked Serbia, were we going to have a world war? No. But just because these two countries are fighting, that also does not mean कि world war start होना ही होना था. The second problem was because of the system of alliances. The system of alliances was started by Bismarck. Bismarck, having defeated France in 1871, had a very clear idea. He said, the only country which has interest in disturbing peace is France, because France has been humiliated. That's why he started the system of the creation of alliances to isolate France, that France should never have a friend. So, in 1879, he created the dual alliance with Austria. In 1882, even Italy became part of it, and it became the Triple Alliance. The system of alliances was created by Bismarck to safeguard the interest of Germany, but this problem was by 1894, France signed an agreement with Russia. Okay. By 1904, now we see that even Britain and France, they became close to each other. They kept on fighting in the 18th century, 19th century, because उस time ये दोनों king थे. Now the king has changed. The king was Germany. After their unification, they became the most powerful country. Okay, and that's why इन्होंने कहा चलो हमारी तो कोई ज़्यादा दिक्कतें ही नहीं थी, क्या हो गया 200 साल की भूल जाते हैं. Let's just stop all that. So Britain and France, they came together by 1904. Meanwhile, Russia got defeated by Japan in 1905. So getting defeated by an Asian power, it was a blot for the Europeans. So in 1907, they said we need protection, and that protection was going to come by joining the field of Britain. So we see creation of Triple Entente by 1907. So this system of alliances, which was started by Bismarck to isolate France, could not be done by 1890s. Bismarck left the office of Chancellor in 1890. So once he left, the whole turmoil started in Europe, and France was able to find the first friend, Russia. Then they were able to find Britain, and by 1907, Europe was divided into two armed camps. So these two things you have to remember. From 1871, on one side we see the development of Eastern question, or the Eastern countries wanted to become independent, and that too at the cost of each other. And second is the problem with respect to the major power, where France is getting isolated by Germany, and it is desperately trying to get a friend, which is got in 1894. So by 1907, the problems were already there. So when in 1914, Austria-Hungary attacked Serbia. Serbia was from Eastern Europe. It got the support of Russia. Russia mobilized. Austria-Hungary was having dual alliance with Germany. So Germany gave support to them. Germany also declared war on Russia. Now Russia was linked to Triple Entente. Britain came. Along with Britain, countries like India, जिनका कोई interest नहीं था, the colonies, they also came. हमने कहा हम भी लड़ लेते, चलो ठीक है. गांधी जी also supported them. ठीक है, ब्रिटेन है तो करना पड़ेगा. The empire is there. So in this manner, all the major countries, they entered the World War. Germany, as always, is against France. So it also fought with France. France का कोई लेना देना नहीं था. But for Germany, it's like picnic. कि पिकनिक तो पेरिस में ही करेंगे. So in the First World War also, they went all the way and able to control France. So this is how the World War began, and this World War is going to become massive. The whole concept of total war was used for this. Why total war? As you can see, participation of the maximum countries of the world. So the war was not fought on one or two battlefields. There were thousands of battlefields throughout the earth where the war was fought. So these are the characteristics of total war. Thousands of battlefields, participation of majority of the countries. Third, it's always going to be a long drawn war. It was fought for 5 years. It is a war of attrition. Attrition means the war is not going to stop until one party loses completely. खत्म ही नहीं होगा तब तक. This is known as war of attrition. Use of new methods of warfare. Okay, the use of various submarines, trench warfare. गड्ढे खोद देते थे, है ना? What they used to do? They used to dug and then eventually stay there so that they can take the strategic position known as trench warfare. That was also started. So total war has all these characteristics. The whole population is providing its best for the victory of the nation. So this concept of total war was linked to the First World War. But in 1917, we see participation of USA, because the manner in which Germany was conducting its war, it started attacking even the civilian ships. USA enters. Okay, other than Germany, the rest of the power who were supporting them, they were weak and ineffective, and that's why in 1919, Germany surrendered. Okay, but rather than signing a treaty, okay, which could have amended something, a revengeful treaty was signed by the victor powers known as Treaty of Versailles. Versailles is important. देखो क्या होता है ना कि there's many things which are symbolic. Versailles is the palace of the king of France. Okay, this is the place where the declaration of unification of Germany was done in 1871. So when Germany was defeated in the First World War, French ministers, they said we are going to sign treaty here, where? Versailles, in the Hall of Mirrors, कि वहीं बैठा के sign करवाएंगे. Okay, it's always going to be symbolic. So this became a rivalry which was never going to end. As per this Treaty of Versailles, first of all, the whole blame of First World War, even a normal person can understand Germany should not be blamed for the beginning of First World War, or at least the full responsibility cannot be transferred to them. There was role of Austria-Hungary, there was role of Russia, there was role of Serbia. Serbia was a small power, तो उसको तो क्या ही responsibility दे? The bigger power should take the responsibility, but here the whole blame was given to Germany. और हम किसी को blame क्यों देते हैं? What's the reason for that? So that then we can impose our conditions. गलती की ना हाले का मान लिया, हाँ करी, अब सुनो, अब क्या करना है? So as a result, a very high war indemnity, roughly 6.6 billion pound or 6,600 million pound, it was put on Germany. Their army strength was limited to 1 lakh. 1 lakh was not even, you can say, could have managed the army of Germany. इतना Germany कैसे करता? इतना बड़ा country है, and they had to limit their strength to 1 lakh. If somebody gives this much money, there was bound to be economic crisis. Economic crisis was bound to be there. So this Treaty of Versailles, which first of all lacked certain kind of moral validity, because सारा blame किसको दिया? Germany को. On the top of it, some of its areas like Ruhr, okay, they were now under the control of France. Alright, they are going to take the coal from that area or iron from that area till Germany is able to repay its war. जितना भी उन्होंने damage किया, war reparation were to be given. As a result, Germany started facing its crisis. And this whole crisis of Germany is going to become European crisis, because in 1919, when Germany accepted defeat, okay, Germany was not invaded. Germany was not invaded. It was having all the industrial setup, army was in place. It was temporarily disbanded. So a very powerful country, the government which accepted a treaty provisions, it was known as Weimar Republic. Okay, Weimar was the place where the Constitution of Germany was drafted in 1919, and it continued till it was repudiated by whom? Hitler. Alright, so this was the one which accepted the Treaty of Versailles. So when we see the rise of Hitler in such a crisis, he started calling these people as traitors, and the famous adage "stab in the back" was used by Hitler. तो इन लोगों ने जाके वहाँ treaty sign कर लिया. Our army was not even defeated, and these people have affected against the interest of Germans. And we see meteoric rise of Hitler. Hitler was able to consolidate power by 1933. which eventually created the background for the Second World War. Similar kind of scenario began in Italy. Italy was part of the Triple Alliance, as we have discussed, in 1882, but in 1915 it signed a separate treaty known as London Treaty with England and did not support Germany in the First World War. It was under the expectation that in 1919, when war will end, large number of territories will be given to it. They are also going to get reparations from the enemies, but nothing of that sort happened in 1919. So Italy also entered a recession phase, and from 1919 till 1922, more than 5 to 6 government had already failed in Italian. Okay, all these Italian governments, they failed in these 3 years. As a reason, in October 1922, Mussolini was appointed by the Italian king. So Mussolini came to power. Initially, Mussolini completely hated the Germans. Okay, he hated Germany. As well as when Hitler became powerful, he was against Hitler also. Italy was trying to take the revenge of the defeat in the hands of Ethiopia. They had been defeated by Ethiopia in 1895-96. So in order to take revenge, they took control of Ethiopia in 1936. And in 1936, he was criticized by League of Nations. And once this criticism deepened, he started taking friendship with Hitler more seriously. Hitler himself was having his own plans. He said, I'm going to create the Third Reich, the Third Empire. The first empire belongs to Frederick the Great of the Prussia. Second empire belongs to Bismarck, who was able to unify Germany. And he said, I'm going to create the Third Reich. I'm going to unify all the Germans. All the Germans includes Germany itself, which was created, including some part of Sudetenland, okay, which has become part of Czechoslovakia, and as well as Austria. So he started following this design, and during this process, he was also against Poland. Okay. All these countries which became prominent in 1919, Czechoslovakia, Hitler was against these countries, and when he attacked Poland in 1939, it eventually led to the beginning of Second World War. And this Second World War, which ends in 1945, and by this end, Germany will become very weak, and we see the meteoric rise of USA and USSR. USA is going to enter in 1941 when Japan attacked the Pearl Harbor in December. USSR is going to join Britain and France only when Hitler is going to invade USSR. Okay, so eventually these two powers are going to become prominent by 1945, and the rest of the European countries which kept on fighting with each other, Britain, France, Germany, they became very weak by 1945. Two major economic systems, because USSR was built on which ideology? Marxist. So following the ideology of Marx, this was against the capitalistic ethos of the West, which was primarily taken care by USA. and this is going to create the problem for 1945. In 1945, the bombs, the nuclear bombs, okay, they were used on Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But by that time, Japan was already ready for submission. So what was the use? Use क्या था उसका? The use was USSR was expanding its footprint in Eastern Europe. All these territories of Poland, etc., they were trying to create their own government in these areas. That's why, to show USSR that if this expansion is not going to stop, USA used nuclear bomb on Japan. So Japan was more of a scapegoat to signal a message to USSR. And already having these fundamental differences, where Karl Marx said there should be abolition of private property. On the other hand, the capitalists, they have this belief that the means of production should be in the hand of capitalists. So this communism versus capitalism fight, along with the rivalry between USA and USSR, is going to create the ground for Cold War. This Cold War is going to play out in the world from 1945 to 1991, in which USSR is going to get dissolved. And this Cold War has various events, बहुत सारे events हैं. It's always going to be tussle between USA versus USSR. During this time period, countries like India, they prefer creating non-aligned movement, didn't want to become part of these two military blocs. And this was established in 1961 formally. Even before this, these countries has met in Indonesia, and those were known as Bandung Principles or Bandung Conference 1955. So this is how the whole equation is going to play out. Okay, let us see some of the concepts which were left yesterday. The events with respect to World War I, World War II, I think that is clear. The framework why Cold War started in the first place, that is also done. Okay. In Cold War, there are certain events. Like initially, it was North Korea versus South Korea, the Korean War, fought from 1950 to 53. Okay. And eventually, we see it was divided along which parallel? 38 parallel. Okay. North versus South. Then the famous crisis, it is with respect to Cuban Crisis. I'm only writing the famous one. Cuba was a socialist country. Okay. Plan was made by USA to topple their dictator, and his name was Fidel Castro. That invasion of 1961 failed, known as Bay of Pigs invasion. That's why what USSR did, they started putting the nuclear missiles in Cuba, which is hardly 100-200 miles from USA. And as a result, USA was now ready to take the leverage and stop those ships which were carrying the nuclear arsenal from USSR. And somehow the equation was dissolved. Otherwise, this Cuban Missile Crisis could have created a third world war. Okay, but it was diffused with the active support from United Nations. Okay, after Cuban Missile Crisis, the next major crisis is going to come only with the invasion of Afghanistan by USSR from 1979. Then we see the change of guard in USSR. Mikhail Gorbachev, he comes to power with election in 1985. He is going to do two major reforms. Those two major reforms are known as Glasnost and Perestroika. Glasnost means openness. USSR, as you can see China. You know how China works. Do you know anything real about how China country is? Everything is propaganda of the state. You'll never know what is going on in China. सब कुछ controlled है. Similar kind of situation was in USSR, where everything was opaque. That's why to change the situation, the policy of glasnost or openness was brought in by Mikhail Gorbachev. And to change the economy as well as polity, he came up with the policy of perestroika, known as restructuring. The literal meaning is restructuring. This eventually did not work out. Whichever side he went, the conservative said you're doing too much political reforms, the radical said too less of the political reforms were done. Economy, the reforms which were done by him to change the communist economy, it didn't work out. In fact, there was contraction of economy to the point of around 7 to 8%. That's why under these circumstances, all the satellite states, they started going away from USSR, and it was finally dissolved in 1991. Okay, so the various events are there in the Cold War. Whenever we talk about Cold War, again there are some stages. Like the first stage is thaw. The second stage is detente. Thaw means the melting of the ice. उसको thaw बोलते हैं, literally if you see. So the first phase of Cold War, which was fought from 45 till 53. In 53, after the Korean War, certain kind of relaxation happened in the relaxation between the USA and USSR. वो actively उसको नहीं fight कर रहे थे. This phase is known as thaw. And after the Cuban Missile Crisis, both the countries realized that it could have easily increased up to the nuclear warfare. That's why permanent relaxation of the tension is known as detente. So these are the two major stages, 1953 and 1962. The invasion of Afghanistan by USSR is known as Second Cold War, because the first Cold War has, to the maximum point, come to a halt when it became even more struggle. All right, for Afghanistan from 1970, all of you know the story. Afghanistan was invaded by USSR, and thereafter we see the support of whom? Mujahideen by USA, which eventually led to the creation of terrorist attack. Okay, the famous 9/11. These are some of the things which you can remember. Shantanu will discuss all those maps which are relevant for you. इसको करेंगे धीरे धीरे करके. आप थोड़ा थोड़ा कॉन्टिनेंट्स का बनाना शुरू कर दो. देखो थोड़ा प्रैक्टिस लगता है, बट धीरे धीरे करके सीख जाओगे डायग्राम बनाना. ठीक है, क्या क्या आप बना सकते हो. जैसे वन ऑफ द मेजर टॉपिक फॉर अस इज फ्रांस. तो फ्रांस का मैप सीख सकते हो. इटली. कॉन्टिनेंट वाइज इफ यू सी, तो अफ्रीका का मैप बनाना सीख लो. ठीक है, अफ्रीका जैसे रिलेटिवली थोड़ा इजी रहता है. इसमें थोड़ा थोड़ा ओरिएंटेशन देना सीख लो, कहाँ कौन सी कंट्री है. तो बहुत अच्छे से ना आपने तो भी एक बेसिक लेवल का मैप आपको सीखना चाहिए. ठीक है, ड्राइंग वगैरह काम आती है प्रेजेंटेशन में. जितना ज़्यादा करोगे उतनी अच्छी रिफाइनमेंट होने लग जाएगी. इवन दो वेरी लेस स्टूडेंट्स यूज डायग्राम्स इन हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल, बट यूज करो, फायदा मिलता है. I also used them and scored very high marks. Similarly, this year also, majority of the toppers of history optional, they have got very good marks in comparison to other optionals. अब धीरे धीरे करके रिलीज करेंगे. Like one of my student, he scored 295, 161 rank. The rank 77 scored 293. One of the student who couldn't make it to the final list, he scored 290. So good marks in comparison to the अदर ऑप्शनल. सो हिस्ट्री के ऊपर जो मार्क्स यूपीएससी दे रहा है वो तो अच्छा आ रहे हैं, बट अगर आप जीएस को अच्छा नहीं करोगे तो रैंक ऊपर नहीं आता है. यू हैव टू लर्न दैट ऑल्सो. अभी तो आप लोग सब कहीं ना कहीं फाउंडेशन कर रहे हो, तो पहले पढ़ाई करना शुरू करो, फिर स्ट्रेटजी, फिर योर स्किल फॉर प्रीलिम्स, मेंस एक्सेट्रा. तो सारी चीज साथ में करोगे तो ये देखो फाइनल रिजल्ट डजंट डिपेंड ओनली अपॉन ऑप्शनल. ऑप्शनल इज गोइंग टू हेल्प यू इन ईदर क्लियरिंग द एग्जाम और गेटिंग ए वेरी हाई रैंक. वो आपको पूरा एग्जाम कवर नहीं कर सकता. आपको पता है मार्क्स में देयर इज 1750 टोटल मार्क्स ऑफ मेंस. आउट ऑफ दैट ऑप्शन इज ओनली 500. बट द ओनली थिंग विच इज इम्पोर्टेंट इज ऑप्शनल में थोड़ा सा मार्क्स यूपीएससी ज्यादा देता है, उतना परसेंटेज में मार्क्स कहीं और नहीं आता. लाइक इफ यू गेट 300 आउट ऑफ 500, दिस इज रफली 60% मार्क्स. इतना परसेंटेज मार्क रेस्ट में आपको नहीं मिलने वाला. कोई और अगर हम करें कि अगर 1200 मार्क्स के आसपास, तो वहां पे आपको उतना नहीं मिलने वाला. ठीक है, बट नो डाउट ऑप्शनल में यू कैन स्कोर वेरी हाई मार्क्स. वन ऑफ माई स्टूडेंट हु कुडंट क्लियर मेंस, इन फैक्ट he scored 163 marks in paper 2. so these are some very good high marks. कि अगर आपके और जगह अच्छे होते तो you could have landed in top 20, but if you're not good in other places तो मेंस भी नहीं क्लियर हुआ. तो ये लोग आप ध्यान शुरुआत से ध्यान रखना कि हिस्ट्री में तो हम कर लेंगे, whatever you will do in the class, this is more than enough for getting very good marks. but GS को भी उतना ही अच्छा क्रिएट करो अपना, है ना, वो बहुत जरूरी है. सिर्फ ऑप्शनल के दम पे हम पास कभी नहीं होंगे. ऑप्शनल आपका सिर्फ एक एक्स फैक्टर बन सकता है जो आपकी रैंक इंप्रूव करवा देगा. लाइक मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द टॉपर्स दे हैव गुड मार्क्स इन ऑप्शनल. ज्यादातर क्या रहते हैं, बहुत कम का होता है कि जीएस में बहुत हाई है, ऑप्शनल में कम है. बहुत कम का ऐसा होता है. मैक्सिमम का ऑप्शनल में ही ज्यादा मार्क्स होते हैं. एंड यू शुड ऑल्सो थिंक इन द सेम मैनर. So we have covered maximum personalities. ऑर्गेनाइजेशन वगैरह बाद में अच्छे से डिस्कस करेंगे, इसमें सिर्फ आउट ऑफ कंटेक्स्ट का कोई ज़्यादा फायदा मिलेगा नहीं. लीग ऑफ नेशन वाज क्रिएटेड इन 1919 टू स्टॉप द वर्ल्ड वॉर. इट फेल्ड. देन वी क्रिएटेड यूनाइटेड नेशंस. ठीक है. कम्युनिस्ट इंटरनेशनल एंड नाटो, बोथ ऑफ देम. कम्युनिस्ट इंटरनेशनल इज मोस्टली अबाउट द स्प्रेड ऑफ कम्युनिज्म, है ना. नाटो एंड वॉर्सो पैक्ट, दे वर क्रिएटेड इन द कोल्ड वॉर फेज. नाटो इन 1949 and the Warsaw Pact in 1955. NAM 61, Arab League, more about the unity of the Arabs, and European Union, it was eventually the culmination of the various organizations created for unity in Europe. यूरोप का सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम क्या रहा है? Consider themselves as the only area which was civilized. Then comes 20th century, World War I and World War II, and Europe lost its monopoly of power over the world. From 1945, we see the rise of USA and USSR. During the Cold War phase, European Union or the countries of the Europe, they were trying to integrate. The reason was they realized that they have lost this place in the world. That's why countries like France, Germany, which were always fighting with one another, they started creating a concept which is known as supranational entity. Meaning, rather than thinking of themselves as French, German, think that you are a European. So this is known as supranational, and this is the embodiment of European Union. They created this group so that they can again become powerful, or at least challenge the monopoly of USA as well as USSR. And this is how they tried to create it from 45 till 91, where the European Union was created. Okay. So that's it for today. We have covered the majority of the concepts in and around world history. सबसे ज़्यादा जो mainstream connected history है, it starts from your 1789 all the way up to 1991. और इसके आसपास में हम कुछ कुछ concept पढ़ते रहेंगे. ठीक है. So the concept classes are over with this. Next week अभी तो prelims होगा. Next week there will not be classes. We'll have some sessions. वो होंगे. अभी आप लोग समझ में आ गया, syllabus समझ में आ गया. You are able to understand all the relevant things or relevant concept in and around it. We'll have some strategy sessions कि paper 1 में किस चीज पे ध्यान देना है long term के लिए. I'm not only going to think about 4 months. I'm thinking for next 1 year. Similarly, what should you do for the पेपर 2? तो एक दो स्ट्रेटजी सेशंस करेंगे नेक्स्ट वीक. and from the next week, the corresponding week, we'll start with map. Okay, तो मैप के साथ स्टार्ट हो जाएगा. नेक्स्ट वीक इज ऑल अबाउट स्ट्रेटजी क्रिएशन, और मैं आपको पूरा हम एक्सप्लेन करेंगे एग्जैक्टली फाउंडेशन में आप क्या क्या चीजें करेंगे. ठीक है, बिकॉज अलॉन्ग विद मी यू हैव टू ऑल्सो डू योर बिट. वी आर गोइंग टू प्रोवाइड यू ऑल द नोट्स, टेस्ट भी आपका टाइम पे चलता रहेगा, बट द रेस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स यू हैव टू ऑल्सो कंसिडर कि भाई आपको प्रिपरेशन में कितना टाइम मिल रहा है. दोज ऑफ यू आर डूइंग जीएस फाउंडेशन कितना टाइम है, and along with those limitation how you have to manage your optional. Okay, I'm also going to make you aware of the recent past. पिछले 4-5 साल का हम देखेंगे how the questions are being asked by UPSC, all those strategic sessions, plus even one session on answer writing completely dedicated to this craft, which is the soul of UPSC mains. ये कैसे करना है along with the classes. So those we are going to announce after prelims. 29th को announce कर देंगे. ठीक है, and then from the next corresponding week we are going to start with map. Map के लिए आपको कुछ नहीं पढ़ना है, nothing. You are going to given all the material in the class. ठीक है, आपको हम मैप वगैरह भी साथ में देंगे, ब्लैंक मैप्स, ताकि आप उसमें प्रैक्टिस वगैरह क्लास के साथ में करोगे. तो वो सारी चीजें आपको नेक्स्ट वीक बता दी जाएंगी एक एक करके. फ्रॉम योर ओन साइड व्हाट इज रिक्वायर्ड, आप एक बार अगर एनसीईआरटी पढ़ना चाहते हो तो यू कैन रीड देम. ठीक है, अभी आपने अगर पढ़ लिया एनसीईआरटी साथ साथ में तो सबसे बेस्ट है. अगर नहीं पढ़ा है अभी तक तो एक बार आप एंशिएंट इंडिया के एनसीईआरटी जरूर पढ़ लो. ऑलराइट, बिकॉज एंशिएंट इंडिया के साथ ही हम स्टार्ट करेंगे. मैप इज अ पार्ट ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडिया इटसेल्फ. आई विल मेक यू अवेयर ऑफ ऑल द थिंग्स, ऑल द प्रॉब्लम्स व्हिच एवरी पर्सन फेल इन द मैप क्वेश्चन. कि मैप क्वेश्चन में क्या क्या चीज़ें हैं जो हमें अच्छे से करनी है. वो आपको सारे 5 क्लासेस में हम फिनिश करेंगे, एंड देन विल स्टार्ट विद द सिलेबस. सिलेबस के साथ स्टार्ट करेंगे ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडिया. ठीक है, सो आई होप कंसेप्ट तो कम से कम समझ में आ गए. क्या क्या सिलेबस के मेन एरियाज हैं वो आपको समझ में आ गए. तो ये स्टोरीज मुझे बाद में सुनानी नहीं पड़ेंगी आपको. वी कैन फोकस ऑन द academic aspect as well as the strategic aspect, plus we can solve the PYQs. For the PYQs also we are going to provide you booklets from the first class itself. Ancient India कैसे ancient से start करेंगे, आपको बुकलेट प्रोवाइड कर देंगे, उसको आप साथ के साथ सॉल्व करते चलना. ठीक है, if we do some one topic, solve the PYQs, ask questions in the classes. जो भी समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, आंसर राइटिंग क्लास के साथ साथ में चलती रहेगी. Mostly in the beginning of the class itself I am going to give you a question, you will write, we will discuss, and then we move forward. One after the other will cover all the topics, and this is going to roughly take 4 to 4.5 months. और उसके अंदर हम फिर सारी चीज़ें फिनिश कर देंगे. ठीक है, तो आपसे बस क्या चीज़ें चाहिए, रेगुलरिटी इन द क्लासेस. दिस इज पैरामाउंट. विदाउट रेगुलरिटी देखो कुछ होगा नहीं. अगर आप 2 क्लास में आए, फिर 2 क्लास मिस कर दिया, फिर आए, बीच का पूरा ब्रेक हो जाएगा मोमेंटम, एंड यू विल फील लाइक यार मैं क्या पढ़ रहा हूँ, क्या समझ रहा हूँ, मुझे दिक्कत लग रही है. पूरा इंडक्शन हम इन कंसेप्ट क्लास के साथ इसलिए करते हैं ताकि आप लोगों को एटलीस्ट हिस्ट्री का पता लग जाए. इवन इफ यू हैव नॉट रेड एनीथिंग इन योर लाइफ, तब भी आपको एक बेसिक कहानी समझ में आ गई, सिलेबस समझ में आ गया. नाउ वी कैन बिल्ड ऑन दिस फाउंडेशन. हाँ ठीक है, नाउ टेक्निकल चीज़ें देखनी पड़ेंगी. जब हम फर्स्ट क्लास एंशिएंट इंडिया की स्टार्ट करेंगे तब विल स्टार्ट विद द सोर्सेज. What is the meaning of a source? How to write answers? We'll see PYQ of sources. तो सारी चीजें अब आपके एग्जाम स्पेसिफिक चलेगा. अभी तक जो भी था, इट वाज एन ओपन एंडेड डिस्कशन ऑन वेरियस टॉपिक्स विदाउट नेसेसरली बीइंग लिंक्ड टू द यूपीएससी. अब हम पूरा फोकस करेंगे यूपीएससी के साथ आपको अलाइन करने का. एंड व्हेन विल हैव द मेंस एग्जाम, है ना, मेंस एग्जाम कब है, सितंबर में है ऑफ दिस ईयर. मैं चाहता हूं तब तक आप भी साथ साथ में ऐसा प्रिपेयर करो, व्हेन वी हैव द मेंस एग्जाम एटलीस्ट यू कैन हैंडल द हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल. जो इस बार का पेपर होगा, एटलीस्ट जहां तक आपका अपना सिलेबस खत्म हो जाएगा वहां तक तो आप कर पाओगे ना. दिस शुड बी आवर इमीडिएट ऑब्जेक्टिव. आई विल ट्राई टू मेक यू फील कि भाई हाँ हमारा पेपर आ रहा है, इवन दो इट इज नॉट कमिंग, यू शुड बी रेडी फॉर इट. कि हाँ ठीक है, पेपर 1 देखते हैं हमसे कितना सॉल्व हुआ, जो हमने क्लास में पढ़ा, डिस्कशन किया, आंसर राइटिंग कहाँ तक पहुंची. So that should be your immediate objective. At this year's mains of the history optional, all of you should be able to at least understand all the questions, and जहाँ तक हो सकता है अपना बेस्ट लिख भी सको, because mostly we'll be able to cover ancient, medieval and modern by then. वर्ल्ड का आई थिंक थोड़ा हाफ पार्टी हो पाएगा तब तक, क्योंकि अक्टूबर फर्स्ट वीक तक का हमारा टाइम टेबल बना है, एंड रफली अगर कभी एक वीक आगे पीछे हो गया तो बाय 15th ऑफ अक्टूबर नेसेसरली आपका फिनिश हो ही जाएगा, ठीक है, उससे आगे तो नहीं जाने वाला। तो आपको ये ऑब्जेक्टिव दिमाग में लेके चलना है कि यू शुड बी रेडी, बिकॉज इफ यू आर रेडी दिस ईयर अगले साल भी हो जाएगा, इतना कोई बड़ा इशू नहीं है ना। बट हमें ऑब्जेक्टिव तो लेके चलना पड़ेगा कि भाई वी शुड बी एबल टू डू सो। सेम थिंग वाज डन बाय द स्टूडेंट्स ऑफ द लास्ट ईयर। आई ऑल्सो टोल्ड देम कि यार अब देखो, एंड व्हेन वी सो द क्वेश्चंस, है ना, द सिलेबस व्हिच हैड बीन कवर्ड, दे वर वेरी हैप्पी, यार जो भी है हम आराम से क्वेश्चन समझ पा रहे हैं। मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम देखो क्या होता है ना, वी डू द फाउंडेशन कोर्स, और फाउंडेशन कोर्स के बाद लगता है सब कुछ खाली एम्प्टी, है ना, ऑल द स्टेशंस आर एम्प्टी, फिर से स्टार्ट करते हो पढ़ना सेल्फ स्टडी में, बहुत ही बेकार प्रोसेस है। एक्सट्रैक्ट मैक्सिमम आउट ऑफ इट। मैं तो ये कहूँगा अगर आपके 100% डेडिकेशन हो तो अगले नेक्स्ट 4 मंथ्स में ले आओ, ताकि वंस योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग आंसर राइटिंग इज डन, फिर आप थोड़ा सा लीनियंट होकर भी पढ़ाई करोगे तो भी आपका काम चल जाएगा। विल नॉट फेस मेजर प्रॉब्लम्स आफ्टर दैट। इट्स ओनली इन दिस फेज वेर यू हैव टू शो 100% डेडिकेशन, बिकॉज वंस योर क्लासेस आर ओवर तो आपका मेरे से इंटरेक्शन कम हो जाएगा नेचुरली, एंड योर डे टू डे डाउट्स आई विल नॉट बी एबल टू टेक, दैट ऑल ऑफ यू अंडरस्टैंड। इसलिए कोशिश करो इसी टाइम पे, है ना, जब लोहा गर्म होता तभी मारो, दिस इज द राइट टाइम, गेट द मैक्सिमम आउट ऑफ मी, ओके, स्टडी मैक्सिमम इन दिस फेज, ट्राई टू डू योर लेवल बेस्ट कि हाँ हम मेंस दे रहे हैं, कीप दैट फ्रेम इन योर माइंड। इफ यूल फील कि नहीं यार नेक्स्ट ईयर है, नेक्स्ट ईयर सितंबर में होगा, प्रीलिम्स देख लेते हैं, ये कर लेते हो, दिस इज द टाइम टू प्रिपेयर मेंस, लर्न आंसर राइटिंग। प्रीलिम्स थोड़ा धीरे धीरे करके भी मैं आपको सेशंस वगैरह लूंगा कैसे आपको करना है। यू कैन डू फाउंडेशन एट एनी ऑफ द इंस्टीट्यूट दैट यू लाइक, बट उसके लिए कुछ स्पेसिफिक स्किल्स चाहिए। और थोड़ा सा ये भी ध्यान रखना है कि जितना भी प्रीलिम्स का सिलेबस में टॉपिक्स हैं वो एटलीस्ट हमारा फेब तक प्रिपेयर हो जाए, बिकॉज मैनी ऑफ यू विल जॉइन द जून कोर्सेज, जुलाई कोर्सेज ऑफ द फाउंडेशन, वो आपका अप्रैल एंड में सिलेबस कंप्लीट करेंगे, और अप्रैल एंड इज टू लेट। ओके, आई हैव गॉट अ लॉट ऑफ रेस्क्यू कॉल्स लास्ट 1 मंथ, सर बचाओ, मेरा तो ये कंप्लीट नहीं हुआ, मेरा तो वो कंप्लीट नहीं हुआ, प्रीलिम्स छोड़ दूं क्या, ये कर दूं क्या, वो कर दूं क्या, बिकॉज ऑल ऑफ यू आर वेरी न्यू, यू आर न्यू टू दिस, यू आर न्यू टू दिस मच प्रेशर, है ना, कि जहाँ पे 2-3 दिन बाद प्रीलिम्स है, रिजल्ट आ रहा है, एंड योर मदर फादर इज लुकिंग, हाँ ये तो बन गए, आपको ही फोन आ रहा है, हाँ प्रीलिम्स हो रहा है ना, दैट इंक्रीजेज द प्रेशर of this exam, the kind of limelight which is given by the media, this further increases the pressure on you कि यार पास होना है। So make sure आप सही टाइम पे सही चीज करें, एंड ऑप्शनल को सीरियसली लो। जितना भी PYQ है क्लासेस के साथ मेरे साथ ही खत्म कर दो ना, क्यों उसको बाद के लिए छोड़ना है, बाद में सिर्फ आंसर राइटिंग करते रहना, अपनी टेस्ट सीरीज फिनिश करना, ऑल दोज थिंग्स यू हैव टू डू, बट राइट नाउ स्टडी, refine your concept, try to understand the areas from where maximum number of questions are going to come, and whatever doubt even you have for the rest of the GS portion also, उसको भी पूछ के खत्म कर लो। क्लासेस के एंड में हर 15-20 दिन में एक सेशन रख लेंगे, तो 3-4 सेशन भी अगर हम रखेंगे इन नेक्स्ट 4 months, all your doubt with respect to preparation will also be over. तो make use of all these classes, अच्छे से फिनिश करते हैं सबको, ठीक है। Right now what you can do, जो ये कंसेप्ट लिस्ट का आपको 4-5 चीजें मिले, इनसे गो थ्रू कर लो, सिलेबस एक बार अपना निकाल के उससे भी गो थ्रू कर लो, यहाँ क्या क्या सिलेबस है। उपेंद्र सिंह आपकी एक बुक है, ठीक है, मैनी ऑफ यू नो अबाउट इट, उसका फर्स्ट चैप्टर अगर खुद से पढ़ने का मन हो तो एक बार पढ़ सकते हो, दिस इज गोइंग टू बी यूजफुल। सम स्टूडेंट्स कम्स टू मी, मुझसे पहले पूछेंगे सर एनसीईआरटी कौन सा पढ़ना है, मैंने बता दिया कि ये एनसीईआरटी पढ़ सकते हो, देन दे गो टू द काउंसलर, सर तो कह रहे एनसीईआरटी पढ़ के आओ। भाई देखो, आपको अपना भला चाहिए, है ना, पढ़ना तो आपको पड़ेगा ही चाहे आप आज पढ़ो चाहे कल पढ़ो, जितना पढ़ लोगे उतना अच्छा है। इवन दो वट एवर आई एम टीचिंग इन द क्लास इट इज सफिशिएंट, बट अगर एनसीईआरटी पढ़ोगे तो एनसीईआरटी देखो उस पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखा जाता है दैट इवन ए किड कैन अंडरस्टैंड इट। आप सब लोग ग्रेजुएशन कर चुके हो, दोज एनसीईआरटी वर रिटन फॉर स्टूडेंट्स ऑफ 11th and 12th, थिंक ऑफ योरसेल्फ 3 years बिफोर। तो अगर उसको एक बार पढ़ लोगे ना तो कोई हर जाना नहीं है, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, बट इफ यू जस्ट स्टॉप इट इवेंचुअली कि नहीं सर ने तो बोल दिया एनसीईआरटी, मैं तो नहीं, दिस इज नॉट फेयर, दिस और दैट, कि आपने कहा था जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी कुछ भी और पढ़ने की। भाई देखो जरूरत तो नहीं पड़ती है अगर आपके पास टाइम है सही से यूटिलाइज करना सीख लो। एक आधी बुक अगर साथ साथ में पढ़ लोगे तो यू विल फील मोर कंफर्टेबल। और बाद में जो आपका फोमो आएगा ना, फोमो पता क्या होता है? व्हेन सम ऑफ योर फ्रेंड फ्रॉम अदर कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट डूइंग हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल विल कॉल यू, मैंने तो ये बुक पढ़ ली, जो कहेंगे मैंने तो पढ़ी नहीं। If somehow you're not able to clear in your first attempt, you'll throw away everything, कहोगे नहीं पहले बुक्स पढ़ते। तो आई एम जस्ट डूइंग इट फॉर यू फ्रॉम द बिगिनिंग, कि आप ये भी कर लो और साथ में बुक्स भी देख लो, ताकि बाद में आपको बुक्स उठाने की कभी जरूरत ही ना पड़े। यू विल बी सेटिस्फाइड कि आई हैव डन इनफ। दिस इज व्हाई आई टेल यू कि जब आपके पास टाइम है उसको यूज कर लो, तो बाद में जब जीएस पे आपको एक्स्ट्रा फोकस करना पड़ेगा, वैसे भी आप बुक्स वगैरह नहीं पढ़ पाओगे। बाद में आपका मन करेगा बुक्स से नोट्स बना लूँ, ये कर लूँ वो कर लूँ। जस्ट सी एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इटसेल्फ कि नोट्स तो जो हम आपको देंगे वो सफिशिएंट है। पीवाईक्यू क्लास में डिस्कस हो जाएंगे, काम फिनिश हो गया, आंसर राइटिंग हमने सीख ली, तो इट्स अ कंप्लीट पैकेज। एवरी 14 days यू आर गोइंग टू हैव वन टेस्ट, ऑल ऑफ यू आर अवेयर ऑफ इट कि फोर्टनाइटली आपका एक टेस्ट होने वाला। आधा एंशिएंट होगा टेस्ट, फिर पूरा एंशिएंट फिनिश एक और टेस्ट होगा, फिर मिडिएवल, मॉडर्न, वर्ल्ड, 8 तो आपके सेक्शनल टेस्ट हैं। एंड देन वी हैव 2 फुल लेंथ टेस्ट एट द एंड ऑफ द मॉड्यूल, जो आपके पूरे 4 महीने सीख लिया, थोड़ा सा आराम से 15 दिन रिवाइज करके, 20 दिन रिवाइज करके 1 महीने तक वो आपको फिनिश करना है। बिकॉज वेन एवर वी डू नॉट हैव अ टाइमलाइन कि कब तक आपको टेस्ट फिनिश करना, आप लिखोगे ही नहीं। वी यूज्ड टू प्रोवाइड अ लॉट ऑफ फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी इन द प्रीवियस बैचेस। आई हैव टोल्ड स्पेसिफिकली टू द काउंसलिंग क्लास, नहीं इस बार नहीं करेंगे। क्यों? रीजन क्या? आप फिर लिखते ही नहीं हो। देयर आर स्टूडेंट, मेनी स्टूडेंट्स ऑफ द प्रीवियस बैचेस, सर मैंने एक ही टेस्ट लिखा है, मैं कब तक लिखूं? जब तक यूपीएससी का प्रिपरेशन कर रहे हो तब तक लिख लो। एक चीज को समझो, समथिंग विच इज नॉट डन इन द फाइनाइट अमाउंट ऑफ टाइम विल नॉट गेट डन इवन इन द इनफाइनाइट टाइम। ये तो सच्चाई है। स्पिरिट डिफीट हो जाता है। तो अपने आप को अगर जिंदा रखना है तो काम करते रहो, पढ़ाई करो, फिनिश इट, है ना। तो एनसीईआरटी अगर पढ़ने का मन है तो यू हैव नेक्स्ट 10 days, उनके अंदर अच्छे से पढ़ाई कर लो। बीच में हम स्ट्रेटेजिक सेशंस लेंगे, वो आप बेसिकली सिर्फ यूट्यूब से देख लें, यू डोंट हैव टू कम हियर इन द क्लास ऑल्सो। अपना आराम से यूट्यूब पे देखो, फिर जब मेन क्लास शुरू हो जाएंगी तब आराम से क्लास में बैठना, पूरा ध्यान लगा के पढ़ाई शुरू करो। रात को अच्छे से सोओ, क्लास में आके नहीं सोना है, ठीक है। मैनी आर लाइक सर मैं तो पहले ये था वो था, अरे यार ठीक है, ऑल ऑफ यू आर वेरी यंग। मोदी जी सिर्फ 4 घंटा सोते हैं, है ना। व्हाट अबाउट ऑल ऑफ यू, है ना। 70 years के पास जा रहे हैं, 4 घंटा सोते हैं, 20 घंटा काम करते हैं। आप कम से कम उसका आधा तो कर लो 10 hours, है ना। इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट, यू शुड हैव अ मिशन। इफ दैट मिशन इज नॉट देयर देन जो चीज अब 6 से 8 महीने में आप कर सकते हो ना, लेट मी टेल यू वेरी फ्रेंकली, अगले 3 साल में भी नहीं कर पाओगे वो। और ये मैंने अपने ऊपर अपना के देखा हुआ है। मेरी मैक्सिमम प्रिपरेशन की जो अच्छी फाउंडेशन थी ना, शुरुआत के 6 से 8 महीने में हुई थी। जब वो एक बार हो गई तो उसके साथ गो थ्रू करना आसान है। एंड देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम विच इज ऑल ऑफ यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड, द सर्कल ऑफ एग्जामिनेशन प्रोसेस। ऑल ऑफ यू अंडरस्टैंड इट। एक बार प्रीलिम्स दिया, यू क्लियर इट, यू विल प्रिपेयर फॉर मेंस। मेंस अगर ठीक होगा, यू विल प्रिपेयर फॉर इंटरव्यू। अपग्रेडेशन का टाइम ही नहीं मिलेगा, मुझे तो 3-4 साल में नहीं मिला। वंस दिस स्टार्ट, जब तक आप एग्जाम प्रोसेस में नहीं हो, आपके पास ओपन एंडेड टाइम है कि ये भी पढ़ लो, वो भी कर लो, बुक भी पढ़ लो, एक्सेट्रा। वंस यू एंटर दिस साइकिल ऑफ एग्जाम, बिल्कुल टाइम नहीं मिलेगा। बिकॉज मेंस के लिए अलग से पढ़ना पड़ता है, इंटरव्यू के लिए यू हैव टू प्रिपेयर अ बिट डिफरेंटली। आई एम नॉट सेइंग सिलेबस विल चेंज, द मेथड्स विल चेंज। जैसे पहले आपको हाँ एमसीक्यू क्वेश्चन सीखना है, बाद में आपका आंसर राइटिंग, बाद में योर स्पोकन पे ज्यादा फोकस करना है, ऑन योर पर्सनैलिटी पार्ट। सो वंस यू एंटर दिस, देयर इज नो टाइम फॉर अपग्रेडेशन। फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट के बाद आई नेवर गॉट टाइम कि बाद में मैं कुछ अपग्रेड कर लूँ। वो तभी मिलेगा जब आप मेंस फेल होगे या प्रीलिम्स फेल होगे, एंड दैट इज द वर्स्ट थिंग टू हैव, व्हिच आई डोंट वांट ऑल ऑफ यू टू फेस। बट इवेंचुअली कुछ को तो फेस करना पड़ेगा, यू शुड बी रेडी फॉर दैट ऑल्सो। बट वो ना करना पड़े इसके लिए नेक्स्ट 6 to 8 months जस्ट गिव दिस मच ऑफ टाइम टू योर सेल्फ, लीव एवरीथिंग एल्स, फोकस ऑन ऑप्शनल। ऑप्शनल को फिनिश करो साथ में। जीएस में भी जो भी वट एवर यूर रीडिंग ऑन योर ओन और आउटसाइड, उसके साथ में एक आधा टेस्ट सीरीज ठीक से करो। बी पंक्चुअल अबाउट इट। गिव योर टेस्ट इन अ फाइनाइट अमाउंट ऑफ टाइम, मेक अ शेड्यूल फॉर दैट। और थोड़ा बहुत जितना हो सकता है, चाहे आपकी 2 क्लास भी हो, 4.5 से 5 घंटा तो उसी में निकल जाएगा आपका आराम से। थोड़ा सा टाइम सेल्फ स्टडी के लिए जरूर निकालो। एवरी डे बिफोर कमिंग टू द क्लास प्लीज रिवाइज वट एवर वी हैव डन इन द लास्ट क्लास। इफ आई हैव गिवन यू सम होमवर्क कि 1-2 क्वेश्चन लिख के लेके आना, प्लीज डू दैट ऑल्सो, बिकॉज दैट इज बेनिफिशियल फॉर यू। माई करियर इज ऑलरेडी देयर, मुझे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा उससे, बट योर करियर डिपेंड्स अपॉन योर ओन एफर्ट्स। दीज स्टूडेंट्स विच हैव क्लियर दिस ईयर, कुछ ना कुछ दिक्कतें आ रहा था उनको 1-2 टाइम में, बट मेहनत करते गए और पास हो गए। नाउ दे आर फ्री फ्रॉम दिस सर्कल ऑफ एग्जाम। 2 ही तरीके से देखो सर्कल ऑफ एग्जाम से आप निकलोगे, या तो छोड़ दो या फिर पास हो जाओ। स्टार्टिंग में हम कभी ये सोच के तो चलते नहीं है कि छोड़ना पड़ेगा, है ना। एवरीबडी इज दैट मच ऑप्टिमिस्टिक इन लाइफ, तो ऑप्टिमिज्म के साथ में क्या चाहिए, हार्ड वर्क। स्मार्ट वर्क मैं आप लोगों के लिए कर लूंगा, आप सिर्फ हार्ड वर्क कर लो, इतना मेरी तरफ से आपको गारंटी है फॉर हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल। लीव द स्मार्ट वर्क टू मी, कि किस टॉपिक में क्या करना है, क्या पढ़ना है, किस तरीके से पढ़ना है, PYQ कैसे समझाना है, वो सब मेरे ऊपर छोड़ दो। मेरे लिए किसी ने नहीं किया, मैंने खुद किया है, लेकिन ये मैं आप लोगों के लिए कर लूंगा, है ना। वन ऑफ माई स्टूडेंट ही गेव हिज फर्स्ट मेन इन 22, फर्स्ट मेंस में ऑप्शन में बहुत हाई मार्क्स था, थोड़ा सा डिफिकल्ट होता है। इसको 290 मार्क्स। कल फोन आया, सिलेक्शन नहीं हुआ, बट ही वाज लाइक सर आई एम वेरी ग्रेटफुल टू यू। मुझे लगा नहीं था हिस्ट्री में मेरा मार्क्स आएगा, बिकॉज उसने बहुत फंडामेंटल अच्छे तरीके से नहीं पढ़ा हुआ था, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ बैड लक हर बार प्रीलिम्स में 1-2 मार्क्स ऊपर नीचे हो गया था। एंड द प्रॉब्लम वाज ना ही सर कि सर मैं प्रीलिम्स से पास होने रहा, मैं मेंस कैसे पढ़ूं। ऑल ऑफ यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस डिलेमा, दिस कम्स इन लाइफ। यहाँ पे आया, 3 महीने अच्छे से पढ़ाई करी, साथ में जो मेरा क्रैश कोर्स टाइप होता है फॉर हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल वो किया, 290 मार्क्स। एंड ही वाज सेइंग कि सर बाकी सब में तो नहीं आया, लेकिन खुशी है हिस्ट्री में आ गया, कहीं तो आशीर्वाद आया। आई वॉन्टेड फॉर ऑल ऑफ यू कि भाई आप मेरे वाला जो ऑप्शनल वाला पार्ट है ना, वहाँ आप 100% दो, मैं भी अपना 100% करता हूँ। लेट अस गेट सक्सेस एज अर्ली एज पॉसिबल, है ना। अच्छा है ना, जो चीज़ 27-28 में अगर आती है वो आपको 25-24 में मिल जाए, उससे अच्छा कुछ नहीं है लाइफ में, बिकॉज देन यू कैन डू समथिंग एल्स इन लाइफ। ऑलराइट, सो एनसीईआरटी अगर पढ़ने का मन है तो RS शर्मा पढ़ लो, अगर उपिंदर सिंह पढ़ने का मन है तो चैप्टर 1 कम से कम पढ़ लो, 2-3 मत पढ़ना, काम के चैप्टर नहीं है, वो आपको पहले ही बता देता हूँ। सिर्फ फर्स्ट चैप्टर, ओनली फर्स्ट चैप्टर ऑफ उपिंदर सिंह, इट्स अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट चैप्टर, बिकॉज दिस विल प्रोवाइड यू सम इन्फॉर्मेशन विच आई एम गोइंग टू डिस्कस इन द फर्स्ट 2-3 क्लासेस। वो आप पढ़ना चाहो पढ़ सकते हो, आप नोट्स नहीं बनाने हैं प्लीज, है ना। पहले आपको बता रहा हूँ, अपने नोट्स नहीं बनाने हैं। मैं पहले आपको फर्स्ट क्लास में समझाऊंगा नोट्स बनाने कैसे होते हैं, खुद से मत बनाना, नहीं तो क्या होगा, बनाते जाओगे, वो उपिंदर सिंह होगा इतना, आपके नोट्स होंगे इतने कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव नोट्स which will kill you in next few years. You'll never be able to revise them, और हर बार छोड़ के साइड रख दोगे। तो फर्स्ट पहले थोड़ा सिलेबस पढ़ लो, नोट्स जो है हमारे हैंडआउट्स को यूज करो, फिर मैं बताऊंगा आपको कहाँ नोट्स बनाने का फायदा है, पहले वो तो समझ लेना, अगर बनाने का मन भी हो तो। रैंडम नोट्स बना के कोई पास नहीं होता। ऑलराइट, तो चलो विल मीट नेक्स्ट वीक, स्ट्रेटजी सेशंस में मिलेंगे, और नेक्स्ट वीक अपना सिलेबस स्टार्ट कर देंगे। ओके ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स, प्रीलिम्स भी एक बार देखना, आई एम गिविंग यू दिस 2-3 days कि आप एक बार प्रीलिम्स भी देखो, सी द काइंड ऑफ पेपर विच कम्स इन प्रीलिम्स। संडे को है ना, आप सब तो दे नहीं रहे, है ना, तो यू कैन एटलीस्ट एनालाइज। जब खुद का पेपर होगा तब तो मन करेगा पेपर लाके घर में छुपा दो कहीं पे, किसने दिया है, क्या हुआ है, नॉट ऑफ दैट सॉर्ट। सी द काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चंस विच कम फ्रॉम हिस्ट्री। क्या आप हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल पढ़ोगे तो देखो ना कितना हिस्ट्री से उसको फायदा मिलता है, नहीं मिलता है। सी ऑफ अदर एरियाज ऑल्सो, ताकि आपको जब जहां भी आप फाउंडेशन कर रहे हैं आपको पता हो कि हाँ सही चीज पढ़ा रहे हैं या फिर नहीं पढ़ा रहे हैं। इवेल्युएट योरसेल्फ, डोंट हैव दैट ब्लाइंड ट्रस्ट, ठीक है, किसी के ऊपर नहीं, अपने के ऊपर भी नहीं। फेथ रखो, ब्लाइंड ट्रस्ट नहीं होना चाहिए। वो ब्लाइंड ट्रस्ट जो होता है जाके लेके डूबता ही है लास्ट में। तो उसको अगर आप सामने रखोगे तो यूल नो कि भाई कहाँ तक पहुंचना है। इफ यू आर एबल टू रीच दैट लेवल तो प्रीलिम्स पास हो जाएगा। जब मेंस के पेपर आएंगे जीएस के, सी देम आल्सो, You realize कि okay, this is the level which is required. That's why exactly what I want कि in history option you see that those papers कि यार कितना हमने पढ़ा, कितना हमें आता है आज की डेट में. I'm going to take you to that level in next 4 months. इसलिए तो कर रहा हूँ मैं, है ना. अदरवाइज मेजोरिटी ऑफ द टीचर्स व्हाट दे डू, पढ़ा लिखा के भेज देते हैं, जब पेपर बच्चा देखते कहते ये तो पढ़ा ही नहीं. दिस हैपेंस. आपको उससे बचना है. बी वेरी अवेयर काइंड ऑफ एन एस्पिरेंट कि हाँ क्या आता है क्या नहीं आता है, मैं वहाँ कहाँ हूँ. इवेल्युएट योरसेल्फ ऑल द टाइम. ठीक है. सो विल डू ऑल दैट.